like a middle-aged mother in this outfit hair combo. Just taking my kids to soccer practice. And then we're gonna go and have mimosas. I did have mimosas for brunch today. So, I'm really living that white girl life right now. You all with a burping fetish are coming for me, aren't you? I stepped outside for like 10 minutes because it's unnaturally warm here right now, even though I'm in like a turtleneck sweater. And I can still smell the burnt smell of skin because me and the sun, we don't get along, so. Hey friends, I'm Allie and welcome back to my channel. It is the end of the month, beginning of a new month, so it's time for me to tell you what I read last month. In February, I read 12 books. Let's do this. Out of the 12 things, I listened to 2 audiobooks, which is weird. I feel like I listened to more, but I listened to 2 audiobooks. I read 2 graphic novels. Really strange month for me. I believe I only read 1 middle grade book for the whole month. 3 short story collections and 1 poetry collection. 3 YA and I believe 1 adult. So I guess that's everything. I don't know. I was gonna tell you how many pages that I read, but honestly, I just don't feel like calculating it right now. So it was a really kind of weird month for me, but honestly, I feel like I really enjoyed almost everything that I read in February. Have been in a little bit of a slump for the past few weeks. And since I did most of this reading at the beginning because I kind of like picked up there, and then I've kind of been like, I've just been listening to a lot of audiobooks because Sims has taken over my life again. Alright, so let's go ahead and get into the wrap up. Always, I'm going to start off with the audiobooks and I will leave the timestamps down below. I listened to The Wife Between Us. This is one of my most anticipated releases for the year. It's a spin on the crazy ex-wife becomes like obsessed with the new relationship kind of deal. So we've all kind of seen this done in mystery thrillers before. It starts off from the perspective of 2 different points of views. One is currently married to, I think his name's Richard. One point of view is from currently married to Richard, and one is from the divorced woman of Richard. And there is like this weird plot twist halfway through, and we do get a little more into like unreliable narrator, alcoholic narrator, stuff like that. So it was a little cliche. It tried to do some weird Gone Girl aspects and stuff, and overall this was just really disappointing to me. I don't think it helped. It would have been okay, except for on the back it's everything that you think is gonna be wrong. So it's the story that you know, but you're never gonna see the ending coming. If it would have never said that, I probably would have been okay with this story. But the whole time I was waiting for something totally new and amazing to happen, and I was just expecting so much more from the story, but it was just full of cliches, and I saw everything happening. And while this does kind of end on a more happier note, it overall just wasn't that impressive. I ended up giving this 3.5 out of 5 stars. It was really enjoyable to listen to just because I listened to this in one sitting, but it just wasn't anything new. It wasn't original. I didn't care for the characters that much, and while I do think this did take a different spin on the crazy ex-wife, it just overall wasn't that memorable of a story. Then I listened to Emma in the Night, and this was a more of a refreshing mystery thriller. So this is about these 2 sisters that disappear, and it is years later. The family has mourned them, has basically been something happened to my daughters and they never came back. I think they believe that they have drowned in the sea, and it is years later, and the one sister comes back and she's like, you gotta help me find Emma. It does have 2 different points of views, and it also switches between the present and the past. So the one point of view is from Emma's sister. Do not ask me her name. I cannot think of it to save my life right now. So we have Emma's sister, who is the one that returned, and of course her point of view is from the past as well as in the interrogation after she has come home. And then we also get the point of view from one of the police detectives on the case, and so she knows, she has been really following this case since the girls first went missing, and she always had like this inkling that something had happened to them. So this goes into what happened when the girls disappeared, and I can't tell you anything more than that because you really have to go into this not knowing what to expect. I will say that I didn't realize this when I picked it up, but I did notice that it was on Goodreads that it does mention that there is narcissism in this book, and it plays a very large part of the book. I don't know if this did like a good job showcasing narcissism. It seemed pretty unbiased. It seemed like a true telling of narcissism. But again, I don't know. I've never had that condition. I don't know anyone with that condition. So I don't know if this was good rep or not. I will say that this book was just, it kept me on my toes the whole time. I just wanted to know what happened. There's such this mysterious air around things, and you don't know if you can trust Emma's sister or not. You don't know where Emma's at, why one sister has returned, why the other one hasn't. Like, there's so many weird things that this just goes into, and like, I guess some of it is pretty unbelievable, but at the same time, it's just like, what? Like, I was just blown away by some of the things that were happening, and just the way the story is told is pretty brilliant in itself. But say though, I didn't really care about the characters, and I mean, it comes to a point where you listen or read so many like mysteries that you kind of know what to expect, and I mean, I definitely got to that point. But I ended up giving this, what did I give this? 4 stars. It was really enjoyable. I believe I listened to this in one sitting as well. So now we moving on to graphic novels. I only read 2 graphic novels for the month, and actually one that I read I technically finished in March, but February is a weird month and I make the rules here. So I'm counting it for February because I read most of it in February. One of the ones that I read was Spell on Wheels. This is like a modern day story. It is about these 3 awesome feminist witches, and they, like, I love them. And basically what happens is their stuff is stolen, and they go on this road trip to recover it and figure out who the bad guy is. For the most part, this was a really fun graphic novel, but it felt Scooby-Doo-ish. I don't even know how best to explain what I mean besides saying Scooby-Doo-ish. The whole time it just felt like it was like cartoony. It felt like almost like it was like making fun of itself at times. And the whole time it was just like they were going on these like separate adventures that led up to like the one bad guy, and they kept mentioning the one bad guy like throughout it. So whenever it's revealed at the end, it's like, oh, we had no idea, even though we've been mentioning it this whole time. And I mean, it was just like a really lacking reveal kind of thing. It's just that part just didn't work for me. I still really enjoyed it. It was a really quick read, and I ended up giving it 4 out of 5 stars. Then we have the Backstagers Volume 1, and oh my goodness, this is a new fave. So I ended up reading this on Hoopla, and I'm really upset because they haven't gotten the 2nd volume yet, and I need it now, which it just released like 2 weeks ago. This is about, I believe it's from the makers of Lumberjanes, which would make sense because the artwork is kind of similar, and it is also about an all-boys school. And basically it is about the backstagers and the magic that happens backstage at the theater at the school. And there's like monsters, and there's just like all these crazy quest things that they go on, and they go on adventures, and there's just like this door, and it's like a labyrinth of rooms, and they like move around, and they're the only ones that know about it, and it's just so much fun. The coloring in this is beautiful, and I do believe that there is going to be quite possibly a male-male romance at some point. There's definitely hints at it. And just, oh my, it's just so good. I loved it so very much. I am so excited to continue on, and I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. Highly recommend. Then we have the middle grade book that I read, and this was a continuation of Sisters Grimm. I read Once Upon a Crime, which I believe is the 3rd or 4th in the series. Oh my god, I don't know what book I'm on. If you're unfamiliar, Sisters Grimm is a middle grade series that I have been reading and loving, and it's kind of like Once Upon a Time for kids. And I know someone told me that actually like the author was mad because apparently Once Upon a Time like stole some ideas from him or something. I don't know. Anyway, So this follows these two girls, and their parents go missing and they are orphaned, and they are sent to their grandmother's house, and she lives in like this weird town basically, and this is where all the fairy tale creatures live. They come to realize this is where all the fairy tale creatures live, and they can't leave this town, and they become like the crime solvers in this fairy tale town. They are descendants of the Grimm brothers, so hence Sisters Grimm. So it's lots of fun. And this one, Once Upon a Crime, actually took place outside of the town that they live in. I think that it's Fairyport is what they call it. And this was just, I mean, we got to see so many other characters. We got to see the people that live outside of the town, and it was so much fun. There was a lot going on. And I will say that I mean, these are slightly predictable because they are for kids, but I felt like this was the most like intense and action-packed wise so far in the series. I ended up giving this one 3.5 out of 5 stars just because it wasn't my favorite in the series. There was just a lot going on, but I still really enjoyed it. Moving along, we are going to get to the short stories in the one poetry collection. I'm just counting it in. So I read 3 short story collections. Wow. And 1 poetry collection. We're gonna start with a poetry collection because y'all know how I feel about modern day poetry. So I finally decided to read The Princess Saves Herself in this one because, you know, it's everywhere. And I do follow the author on Tumblr and have since like the beginning of time, I feel like. And she is a wonderful person. I love her content on there, and I gotta say, I really wanted to love The Princess Saves Herself in this one. I don't know why I tried. I know at this point that modern poetry is not for me. It's not something that I like. I don't know why I picked this up. It's my fault that I dislike this book, in my opinion. So, yeah. It always just feels like Tumblr poetry that has been published, and it's just a regurgitation of the same words, a regurgitation of the same messages over and over again. This one struck me as a little odd because it says the princess saves herself in this one. But there was, nearing the end, it felt like it was very much relying on a guy or love interest or whatever to kind of pick up the pieces in her life. That's how I was reading it, and it kind of like, I was thinking, isn't this called The Princess Saves Herself in this one? And why is it talking so heavily about this other person, relationship, guy, I believe? So that kind of struck me as a little odd. I mean, it does get a little more self-empowering at the end, but this definitely felt more like diary entries that I made in like middle school. And I can understand just how personal this book was and how much it means to the author and how much it means to so many other readers who have read it. I personally was not impressed, didn't care for it. It's not my thing, and I know it, so it's my fault that I don't know what else I was expecting. It's modern poetry. I already know I don't like it, so I gave it 1 out of 5 stars. Then I read Shoot Down the Windy Bird, and if you guys don't know, this is a short story and poetry collection by Julie over at Pages and Pens here on the YouTubes. She had sent me a copy of her book because I expressed interest in reading it. I love short story collections, so I was like, hey girl, send it to me. So I ended up picking this up. This is kind of like, it's kind of like the stories start at like birth and move up through age. I don't know, like the things that happen in your life. So it's kind of like a timeline, but they're all different voices. Like it's different people in each one, but it's at like the different ages. And it is kind of set up in timeline like format. Do you know what I'm saying? Do you get what I'm saying? I hope you get what I'm saying. I know a lot of people who've really loved this and have really resonated with this. I haven't rated it because I just don't think it was for me. And I love Julie so much, and I hope she's not gonna be mad because I mean, there were some really wonderful stories in here, but for the most part, it just wasn't what I expect when reading a short story. This is more of a collection of flash stories, in my opinion, just because they were so short. It almost felt like the beginning idea of a short story, but it wasn't completely fleshed out, in my opinion. When I am reading a short story, I'm still expecting something that is like close to like 10 or more pages long. Most of these were within a page and a half to 3 pages. There might have been like one that was maybe 5 pages long, and it was actually set up into 2 parts, and I feel like this probably could have been combined. So I will say that this just didn't feel totally fleshed out to me. I definitely think that all the themes were there. I think that it was fairly well written for the most part. There were a few like grammatical things, but that's me as an English major being picky as shit. So I will say that for the most part, like, I enjoyed the content of this, but it just didn't feel full to me. I'm not really sure where to rate this because I know that that is something that is more of a personal taste. I think if I did have to rate it, I would probably put it around 3 stars for me personally. And I love Jules so much. I'm so excited for her future work. I mean, there is definitely potential here. I do think that she is a good writer. I have heard her tell stories. She's so good at telling stories, so I definitely think that she has it in her. I just don't think that this was what I was expecting. Moving along. Next we have Her Body and Other Parties. This is a very interesting collection of short stories. These are all kind of modern day stories, very feminist kind of stories, but there was like a supernatural twist to all of them, and it was very fascinating. I think there was only one that didn't have a supernatural twist to, and it just felt like, oh, it was like so real, it was terrifying in a way. Like, I related to it way too much, and it made me a little uncomfortable, but like in a good way. Like, you did such a good job at that, but like, oh, personally, I'm like feeling attacked right now. It was just such a fascinating collection of short stories. I mean, they were so brilliantly written. I have decided to rate all of the stories separate, which I did on Goodreads. You guys can go check out my Goodreads, check that out, see what's going on. I decided to give each story a star rating, and also noted some themes about the stories or what they were about. There are a few that just really stuck out in my mind, or some of like my most favorite stories that I have read. They were just so brilliantly done. They were just like, you always were guessing what was going on. They each had like an underlying kind of story to them about what this meant to like Ivy, like being satirical and stuff like that. So I mean, this was just such a thought-provoking read, and it's been so long since I feel like I've really picked up a collection that has just really made me think about things, and this one definitely did. It's definitely a more serious read. It's not something that is light. It's not something that, even though they're short stories, you're gonna fly through it. It definitely took me like the better part of all month. They were longer short stories as well, so definitely very thought-provoking, not exactly upbeat, but a fantastic collection of stories. I ended up giving this 4 out of 5 stars. I don't know if I'll ever give a short story collection 5 out of 5 stars, because there's always going to be stories that I don't like. It's so hard. The other one that I read, it was actually an e-arc, but I went and bought a copy because it was so good, and that is Meet Cute. This was a newer anthology that came out. This is all about soulmates meeting for the first time and how they met. And oh my, this was so stinking cute. There's so much diversity in this. There's all kinds of different themes going on. There were some that were futuristic, some that were like nerdy, some that were cute. I mean, there was just a little bit of everything in this. And I definitely had some that just really stuck out in my mind. Were just like, some of them were just more realistic, some of them were a little more romantic. I mean, these were just so much fun. I have also decided to rate each of these stories separately, again mentioning like the themes or a little bit about the stories with it, so you can definitely check that out. But I did end up giving this, I believe I also gave this 4 out of 5 stars. Very cute. Would highly recommend if you're looking for something just kind of fun to start off with short stories. Then we have everything else. After that, I do believe I've gotten to everything else. Everything else that I read for this month, I got a little overexcited about. As you can see, I was a tabbing machine this month. I actually don't know if you can tell, but I went through so many tabs this month. Like, I probably went through over like $6 worth of tabs this month. So you can see, like, in the order that I read them, the progression of like somewhat tabs, a little more tabs, just tab the hell up here. One of the first books that I read for the month was one of my most anticipated releases, and that was The the last in the Falling Kingdom series. This is Immortal Reign. This follows all of my favorite characters in the most brutal and strange world. And if you guys don't know what Fallen Kingdoms is, it's basically we follow two people from each of like 3 kingdoms. Like, they're all very different from each other, and there is this magic that is said that is in the world somewhere, and they all kind of become kind of power hungry to see who can find the magic first and wield it for themselves. And of course, Fallen Kingdoms is that while this is happening, their kingdoms are basically falling apart. Their country is falling apart, so this is full of drama. This is just straight up drama, this whole series. There are so many different relationships and ships. There's all kinds of different swapping of loyalties. It is just brutal and awesome, and I love this world so much. I'm so very sad that it's over, but I did give the conclusion 5 out of 5 stars. I read this book in 1 sitting. Okay about this ending. Like, I am happy with this ending. And I mean, I was super nervous for most of this series because Morgan Road's writing style and some of her plot twists have gotten a little old over time. This was I was very happy with this ending. I really enjoyed this book. It's such a fast read for being a fantasy. It's not overly complex. It's pretty easy to understand, pretty easy to follow. The characters are awesome. Everyone has their faves. And I mean, it's such a great, like, good beginner fantasy series, and it's just so much fun. So, really happy with how this turned out. 5 out of 5 stars. And we have, I buddy read The Cruel Prince with Vanessa over at Paper Fairy. I had so much fun buddy reading this because it's just so much fun to just talk about, like, the thoughts and feelings that you have, especially when you have a lot of them. So, I ended up staying up till, I think it was almost like 4 in the morning reading this book. I do believe I read this in about 2 sittings just because Vanessa like got a jump start on me, and I was like, oh my god, I'm never gonna catch up, and then like I ended up reading the whole book. I'm sorry, Vanessa. But I just had so much fun. I didn't think that I was going to enjoy this book because when I started it, I was like, you know, not anything new, honestly. It's about, it takes place in the Fae world, and I will say that I like that this Fae world did seem a little more harsh, a little more different than some of the like more romanticized Fae stories that I've read. And it is about these girls, their parents are murdered by like, he's a higher up fairy, Fae, whatever, in the world. And basically he takes them back and raises them as their own, but they are humans living in the Fae world, and one sister really doesn't want to be there, another sister kind of just wants to blend in, and then the sister that we follow, she wants to be Fae, like she wants to fit into this world, she wants to show them that she is successful. I think what I liked most about this is that our main character is actually not that nice of a person. Like, she is bloodthirsty, she is cruel, she is like, she knows what she wants and she's gonna go for it. She doesn't care who is in her way. She is okay with like lying, like she knows that that is her superpower in this world. So I think that was like the most interesting part, that she wasn't all that nice of a person. But I mean, all of the Fae are pretty mean to her, especially the Cruel Prince. So I will say that I honestly thought this was a little predictable. It wasn't like it was anything original, but it was so addicting. Oh, I could not get enough of this. Like, it is a little slow in the start, but once you get into some of the more action, it is a little dramatic at times, and there were some plot points that I felt like were a little underplayed. Some things. I reached the end of this and I was like, okay, where the hell is the second book? Because I gotta finish the rest of this right now. I will say that I don't think that the love interest was fleshed out enough for all the dramatics that happen. Oh my god, so dramatic. And I did find myself a little eye-rolly at that. But for the most part, you know, this was an enjoyable read. Yeah, I ended up giving this 4.5 out of 5 stars. Like, it was such an addictive read. And then the last book that I had to show you guys was probably my favorite read of the whole month. Amanda sent me Red Rising because it is one of her favorite books of all time. I've been putting this off and putting it off and putting it off because it's such an intimidating series, honestly. I'm not really a fan of sci-fi, And I had started this at the beginning of the month and was like getting into it. I had to keep stopping because I had to keep researching what the hell was happening. This is a very complex world. It was kind of hard to get into it first because I was like, this is a lot of information to take in and I don't know if my little brain is ready. So after you get all this information, and I did honestly, I printed out maps and I printed out some info to help me along the way. So I'm really glad that I didn't have to do this on my own, and there's already like art and information out there. So I was able to look that up. I did understand the world a little bit better. For being something that is futuristic, this was very barbaric because basically you reach a point where it's like, okay, we're done with like the sci-fi fantasy part of this, and now we're just gonna set you in a field and you are gonna battle for things. And that's what I liked. I really liked that. That was lots of fun. This was just like, oh my god, it was so crazy. I don't even know where Pierce Brown came up with these ideas. Like the whole time I was like, oh my god, this is a madman writing this series and I love it. There's just so many things that happen in this, and I was like, I would never ever in a million years thought to do that, and he done did it, and he did it well, and everything was just, it's such a complex world. But honestly, once I got into it, like that didn't even matter. I was just there for all the bloody goriness that was happening, and it was wonderful. So as you can see, I really tabbed her up. And I was like messaging Amanda all along the way. I'm like, does this happen? Is this what happens? Let me tell you my theories on this, and who is this? And like, she was probably annoyed with me, but at the same time, I got into this. Once I got into this, I could not put it down. I was like almost nearing the end and just hurried up and ordered Golden Sun, which now I can't get into because I have the same problem. There's a lot of information at the beginning. So once you get past the beginning part and get into this was fantastic. So I ended up giving this 4.5 out of 5 stars. I did add it to my favorites list. The only downside is that I just didn't understand everything all the time. And apparently it only gets better from here. Oh my god, is that everything? Yes, Alright, so that was the 12 things that I read in February. Remember when I said I didn't want to read that much? Well, Allie. Let me know what some of your guys' favorite reads from February were, Yep. Hope you guys have liked this video. Don't forget to subscribe to see future wrap-ups from me. I almost did not get that out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!